they catch an abundance of fish. Friends, as we come before this text, which I'm assuming that famous song comes from, where Jesus tells Simon that he will make him a fisher of men, it is a deeply missional text. It is a missional text. It is something that we are supposed to hear, the calling of Jesus over our own lives, and then a call over our lives to call others to come to know Him and about His kingdom and His grace, and all of that comes with that. And perhaps this text, and I have in the past preached on this, a reflection on our own journey and our own call, and the moment we decided that we were going to follow Jesus. And I've heard many a wonderful sermon about this mission of ours, the mission that Jesus calls us to. But it was rather interesting to me that when I consulted the lectionary and saw this Sunday that this was the set reading for the text, that there was something else that seemed to leap out at the text, something that I hadn't quite seen or perhaps given proper consideration of. And that was the interaction between Jesus and Simon Peter. So we know the story. Jesus is preaching and teaching. He's gathered a crowd. So he's becoming more well known, at least in that place. For there are people that are listening to him, people that are following him. So much so that Jesus is able to get into a boat and to be pushed slightly away from the shore to continue his teaching. I suppose it's a little bit like a concert or a famous person that people want to crowd in and get closer to touch Jesus. And this was just a way that he could sit down and he could teach and be at ease. And I wonder whether Simon Peter and the others, the other fishermen who we are told are washing and mending their nets on the shore, are also listening to Jesus speak. When Jesus calls them and says, "Come, let us push the boats out into the deep and to throw down your nets." And you can hear it in Simon's reply that he wants to say, "Jesus, we've been busy all night. We've done it. There are no fish," or "we have caught all of the fish that are there." But he catches himself, perhaps because he wants to be proved wrong. Or perhaps it is because even inside of Simon Peter, there is something that is stirred in his spirit, that he longs to trust Jesus. And so they let down the nets, and lo and behold, they catch an abundance of fish. So many fish that the nets were beginning to break. So many fish that when they even call the others to come and help them, the scripture says to us that the boats are beginning to sink. Already our minds should be making a connection to a reading that we did a few weeks ago with Jesus changing water into wine. We saw in that story that Jesus doesn't change just enough for everybody to get through the celebration, but he changes this extraordinary amount of water into wine, that there is just this abundance of good quality wine. Today it's the same in our reading. It's not just let your nets down and catch a little bit of fish, some fish, enough to prove that Jesus had some fishing skills of his own, or happened to see some fish glint in the water, but an abundance of fish that the boats are struggling. But it's the interaction of Jesus and Simon Peter that happens directly as a result of that. Simon, in that moment, is overcome with all of these fish and his friends and how much there is, and being reminded that they had been at it all night. This wasn't a fluke. This wasn't luck. This was a miracle. And so Simon Peter responds to Jesus. He responds in a confessional tone of two things. Firstly, he confesses that Jesus is Lord. Simon acknowledges that this isn't just somebody. It isn't just a good preacher. It isn't just somebody who has miraculous powers. This is the Lord. The words that he says declares that Jesus is Lord. Listen. Go away from me, Lord. I am a sinful man. So he confesses that Jesus is Lord. The second confession that he makes is he acknowledges that he is sinful. That he has sinned. That he has fallen short of God's call over his life. And we're told that he does this on his knees. He begs Jesus to go away from him. And he confesses that he is a sinful man.